Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. So tell me, does your brain ever feel like a radio that's just stuck between stations? Full of static, noise, and everyday stress? If that sounds familiar, you are absolutely going to love today's topic. We are imparting and decoding the exact philosophy and mechanics of meditation, just as they are laid out in Ryuho Okawa's incredibly comprehensive source text, The Secret of Meditation. We're going to break down the literal physics of the mind presented in this book and turn these really deep concepts into clear, actionable takeaways. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. The essence of meditation. 2. Core posture and breathing. 3. 3 types of meditation. And finally, 4. 3 life-changing effects. All right, starting right off with section 1, the essence of meditation. Now, I really want you to prepare to rethink everything you might assume about just sitting quietly. The text asks us to view this practice not just as a quick relaxation technique to blow off steam, but as a profound structural shift in how your mind actually operates. According to the foundational definition provided directly by the author, meditation is the act of tuning the mind's wavelength to the frequencies of the real world. Now, in the context of this book, the real world refers to the original spiritual realm, this perfectly harmonious world beyond our physical one. Notice the word wavelength here. It's so crucial. The text treats meditation almost like the physics of the mind. So think of it less like zoning out and more as a mechanical process of frequency alignment. To really grasp why we need to tune our minds in the first place, the book sets up this stark contrast. On one side, we have our physical 3D world. It's inherently noisy, chaotic, and just filled to the brim with worldly worries. On the other side is the real world, that spiritual realm we just talked about, characterized by ultimate peace and harmony. The whole goal of the practice is to bridge this gap, letting us escape our daily chaos and anchor ourselves in that profound harmony. And this is where the author leans heavily into this brilliant radio metaphor. The human mind actually functions as both a broadcasting tower and a receiving antenna. Think about that for a second. Throughout your day in the 3D world, you are constantly receiving chaotic signals, like picking up everyone else's stress when you're stuck in traffic. And you're broadcasting your own anxious frequencies right back out. Meditation, therefore, is simply the deliberate act of reaching out and adjusting your mind's dial to catch the right harmonious frequency. Moving right along to section 2, core posture and breathing. Well, before the mind can be tuned, the physical body has to be prepared, right? You can't tune a broken radio. First up, straighten the spine. This creates a really clear physical channel. Second, exhale slowly from the mouth, completely releasing that pent-up tension. And third, inhale deeply into the Tanden, which is your lower abdomen. According to the source, repeating this specific breathing cycle is vital because it quiets the body's natural chaotic rhythm. Once the physical body is brought into this state of silent stillness, the mind is finally free to adjust its wavelength. Which brings us to section 3, 3 types of meditation. So, once that physical foundation is totally set, where exactly do we direct our focus? The text actually lays this out using the rule of 3, categorizing the entire meditation spectrum based on your desired frequency. Type 1 is harmony, focused on reflection. Type 2 is purpose, focused on self-realization. And type 3 is direct communication, focused on interacting directly with the real world. Let's break these down one by one. Let's look at type 1, harmony and reflection. The book describes achieving a state of munen muso, which is basically an entirely empty mind completely free from worldly thoughts. From this super quiet state, you project your past events onto a mental movie screen behind your closed eyelids. But here's the trick. Instead of reliving the emotions of your past, you watch yourself as a third-party observer. By objectively analyzing your own actions, you actually clear the negative static from your mind's antenna. Once that mental static is completely cleared out, the text introduces type 2, purpose. Instead of looking backward at the past, this involves projecting your ideal future self onto that very same mental movie screen. The text refers to practices like the meditation of light and self-realization meditation here. It's a highly directed, intentional broadcast from your mental antenna, pushing a clear vision of future success and purpose out into the universe to align with higher frequencies. And finally, the source details types 3, direct communication. Now, this is presented as the most advanced form of the practice. According to the text, once the mind is perfectly tuned and focused, one can achieve direct interaction with the real world. The author includes experiences like astral projection in this category. We're imparting this strictly as the text frames it, of course, as the ultimate level of spiritual interaction where the practitioner's consciousness temporarily transcends the 3D physical body to experience the spiritual realm directly. All right, on to our final section. Section 4. 3 life-changing effects. So what is the ultimate payoff from mastering these specific wavelengths and putting in all this daily mental work? Well, the crucial point boils down to 3 profound benefits, exactly as the text promises them. First, the practice removes worldly worries and anxieties by completely disconnecting you from that 3D chaos. Second, it brings a profound sense of true happiness. The text actually categorizes this as feeling God's light, leading to states of minor and even major ecstasy. And third, and perhaps most practically for our daily lives, it allows you to regain subjective control over your life, rather than just being passively pushed around by external circumstances. The imagery chosen for the sourcebook's cover, the flowing, pristine water and the sparkling divine light, perfectly mirrors the ultimate goal of the practice. It's all about washing away the anxiety of the modern world and bathing the mind in the serenity, true happiness, and light of the real world. It is quite literally a visual representation of a perfectly tuned mental frequency. To really lock in everything we've learned today, I want to highlight this absolutely crucial quote derived from the concepts in the text, "Change your viewpoint to look at yourself from the real world." According to the book, this right here is the ultimate power of meditation. It's the ability to step completely outside of negative, earthly influences. Because when you can view your 3D life from the peaceful, objective vantage point of the spiritual realm, you fundamentally regain control over your own narrative. It stops you from being a mere passenger in your own life. Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. Your mind is an incredibly powerful antenna, and it is constantly broadcasting and receiving. Based on the mechanics we've explored from the text today, that dial is entirely in your hands. So I'll leave you with this question. What wavelength will your mind tune into today? Thank you so much for learning with me in this explainer. I highly encourage you to keep observing your own mental frequencies out there. Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll catch you next time. Welcome to this explainer. Let's dive right into chapter 2 of our source material, The Secret of Meditation. If you're tired of meditation advice that just doesn't seem to fit into your packed schedule, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to break down this masterclass into a highly practical guide designed specifically for the modern mind. So, have you ever finally found a quiet second, closed your eyes, taken a deep breath, and bam! You're immediately hit with a massive wave of work emails, grocery lists, and maybe some random thing you regret saying 5 years ago. Yeah, we've all been there. And the great news, the text says you aren't doing it wrong. That's just the reality of modern stress. Trying to force your brain to be totally empty right out of the gate is basically impossible for most of us. Instead of fighting that flood, we need a smarter approach. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. 1. Tuning the wavelength. 2. The foundation of harmony. 3. Reading meditation. 4. The mind's screen. 5. Purposeful evolution. And finally, 6. Ultimate happiness. Let's get into it. Section 1. Tuning the wavelength. This first concept completely changes the game on how we should view the brain during meditation. The text literally compares the human mind to a sophisticated broadcasting tower, like an antenna that is constantly sending and receiving signals. Think about a TV set. If you're watching a channel full of static, you don't try to empty the TV, right? You just change the channel. The mind isn't some empty void we have to completely shut off. It's meant to process frequencies. We just need to manage the antenna. So, what does this actually mean in practice? It's all about frequency adjustment. In our day-to-day lives, we're constantly getting blasted by low-frequency static. Stress, arguments, endless to-do lists. Meditation is just the deliberate act of turning the dial away from that worldly static and tuning into a clear, peaceful, spiritual wavelength. You aren't emptying your head, you're literally just changing the station. Section 2, the foundation of harmony. Now, if we're tuning the dial, what's the very first channel we need to find? The source is super clear on this, and honestly, it's a huge relief. 70%. That is the magic number. Maintaining basic mental harmony makes up 70% of the entire meditation journey for beginners. You literally don't have to be a Zen master unlocking the secrets of the universe on day 1. For a long time, your only job is just calming the ripples of your mind. That takes a massive amount of pressure off anyone just starting out. The text describes this harmony as an absolutely indispensable first gateway. A lot of people get frustrated and quit because they try to skip straight to advanced, deep meditation without getting this peaceful baseline down first. But if you don't pass through this gate, if you can't lay down that 70% foundation of just keeping your mind's wavelength steady, you simply cannot access those deeper states. It's the mandatory prerequisite. Section 3. Reading meditation. Okay, understanding harmony is great, but how do we actually do it when our schedules are absolutely packed? The source knows exactly who it's talking to, the busy modern worker. It totally gets that we can't all just drop everything and run off to a mountain retreat for a week. When you're constantly stressed, the second you close your eyes, your internal channel just snaps right back to deadlines. So we need a bridge, a set of training wheels to help lock that mental frequency in place. Enter a really brilliant technique called reading meditation. The text suggests picking up a highly spiritual or philosophical book, but you don't just skim it. You dedicate 1 to 2 unbroken hours to it. And here is the real key. You read with a red pen in your hand. You actively underline and engage with the material. This physical and mental focus acts like a massive anchor. It stops your mind from drifting back to daily static. By aligning your thoughts with the author's high-frequency channel, you are meditating, even if you aren't sitting cross-legged in silence. Section 4. The Mind's Screen. Once you've got that harmonious frequency locked in, whether that's through sitting or reading, you're ready for the next step, reflective meditation. And the visual metaphor the text uses here is just amazing. It says to project your past actions and thoughts onto the screen on the back of your eyelids like a movie. Literally, imagine sitting in a dark, quiet theater, and the screen in front of you is playing the footage of your own life and your own history. But there's a huge catch. It's all about how you watch that movie. The trap we usually fall into is on the left side here, drowning in past regrets, beating ourselves up, getting tangled in painful emotions. That is just more static. The actual goal of reflective meditation is on the right, watching yourself totally objectively from a third-person perspective. You aren't watching to punish yourself. You're just calmly analyzing the footage like an impartial observer. This objective viewing cleanses the mind and perfects your tuning. Section 5. Purposeful Evolution. So, we've tuned the dial, built our 70% foundation of harmony, and cleared out the static on our mental movie screen. What comes next? Well, now we can finally introduce a specific purpose. It's a clear progression. Step 1, establish harmony. Step 2, purify through objective reflection. And only then, at step 3, do you bring in a specific self-realization goal. The text really warns against rushing to step 3. If you try to practice purposeful meditation while your mind is still full of static, your purpose is just going to get tainted by everyday anxieties and greed. And notice how the source talks about true purpose. This isn't about aggressively wishing for a bigger house or material wealth. It says that when your mind is genuinely calm and your frequency is high, your ideal spiritual purpose naturally floats right to the surface. It just organically emerges from that state of peace, rather than being forced by worldly desires. Section 6. Ultimate Happiness. And that brings us to the apex of the journey, the ultimate reward for putting in all this foundational work. At this stage, the practice goes way beyond basic stress relief. By moving properly through harmony, reflection, and purpose, the text explains that we open ourselves up to real spiritual communication. When your receiver is finely tuned with zero static, you can connect with a higher dimension, what the source calls the real world. You actually become receptive to higher spiritual guidance. Meditation becomes a literal bridge between your everyday life and a much more profound reality. This deep connection is the actual source of profound enlightenment and ultimate happiness. We're not talking about a fleeting good mood here. We're talking about a deep-seated tranquility. It comes from knowing that your mental antenna is perfectly tuned to the highest possible frequency. You have mastered the static, and by doing that, you've mastered your own mind. Which leaves us with this final thought. The text fundamentally puts the power back in our hands. Your mind isn't just a passive bucket filling up with daily stress, it is a powerful antenna. So, taking everything we've looked at in today's explainer, ask yourself, if your mind is an antenna, what channel are you choosing to tune into and broadcast right now? Are you going to let the static win, or are you ready to reach out and adjust the dial?
Welcome. Today, we're diving into the messy, everyday realities of meditation, looking specifically at Chapter 3 of Ryuho Okawa's The Secret of Meditation in this explainer. You know, we usually read about meditation and it sounds so incredibly serene, right? Completely detached from the real world. But what happens when you're actually sitting there, trying to quiet your mind, and real life just aggressively barges in? Well, that is exactly what this source material tackles, and we're going to unpack it all together today.
Okay, really quick, here's our roadmap. We're going to look at practical doubts, the targets of prayer, handling real-world interruptions, and finally, spiritual sensitivity.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Practical Doubts.
We tend to think our practice has to be completely flawless, like we need to be isolated on a mountaintop. But looking at the source, this chapter is actually built entirely around direct Q&A. These are highly relatable questions from actual practitioners who are looking for real, actionable advice, not just some abstract pie-in-the-sky theory. It completely bridges that gap between high spiritual concepts and the literal day-to-day friction of trying to sit still.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, Targets and Connections of Prayer.
So the text poses this incredibly direct question. When you sit down to meditate or pray, where exactly is your focus supposed to go? Like, do you reach out to your guardian spirit? Or maybe advanced spirits you feel a connection with? Or do you just go straight to the top, to the Creator, the Supreme God? It's a super common roadblock that can completely derail your session before you even take a breath.
The author's advice here is just brilliantly simple. He explicitly advises starting with your own guardian spirit. Why? Well, because they act as your specialized guide. They are literally the entity that knows you best, so you don't actually need to worry about reaching the top right away. Your guardian spirit is like a conduit. If the content of your meditation needs higher intervention, they'll route your thoughts upward for you. And yes, ultimately, all sincere prayers do connect to the fundamental supreme God of the universe, but your guardian spirit, that's your most effective, immediate point of contact.
And there's this fantastic metaphor in the text to illustrate this. Think of your thoughts during meditation like sending out a signal. If your prayer is, say, driven by the wrong intent, maybe it's purely selfish, or it just doesn't align with divine will. It's like shooting an arrow straight up into the sky. Without a specific target to catch it, it just loses momentum and falls right back down to earth. But if you have the right intent, your thoughts actually act like a radio wave. The appropriate spiritual receiver, like your guardian spirit, will easily tune in and catch that exact frequency.
Moving right along to Section 3, Handling Interruptions, the real-world stuff.
Okay, picture this. It's a highly relatable scenario straight from the text. You finally found your Zen. Your mind is perfectly quiet. And then, ding dong, the doorbell rings. It's an Amazon delivery. What do you actually do? Do you ignore it, but then ruin your focus anyway, wondering what's in the box? Or do you completely break your meditative state to go answer the door?
The author's advice here is so refreshingly grounded. He just straight up acknowledges reality. Yes, it is a fact that it's incredibly annoying to have your deep state broken. It's tough, but the solution? Just go get the parcel. Seriously, don't stubbornly sit there forcing your concentration when it's already shattered. It is perfectly fine to hit pause, deal with the delivery guy, and simply pick up your practice later.
The real key here is contrasting how we normally react with the ideal response. The wrong approach is sitting there, holding on to frustration or anger just because your perfect session got ruined. The text points out that holding on to that anger is really just a form of negative attachment. The recommended approach is flexibility. You've got to calmly accept the situation, let go of the attachment to having an uninterrupted session, and just deal with reality.
In fact, the text gives us a simple 4-step progression to handle these moments without losing our spiritual cool. Step 1, accept the interruption. Don't deny it. Step 2, calmly pause the session. Step 3, go address the worldly task. Go sign for that package. And Step 4, resume later without carrying any lingering frustration. Honestly, mastering this flexibility is just as crucial as mastering your breathing techniques.
All right, our final stop, Section 4, Spiritual Sensitivity and Physical Resistance.
So the source tackles a very specific and honestly sometimes kind of scary concern. Practitioners sometimes feel these really unsettling physical sensations. We're talking static electricity zapping through the head, sudden headaches, or weird physical aches. And that naturally brings up a real fear of accidentally encountering lower-level or negative entities while your mind is wide open. So how do we stop that?
While the author gives some fascinating specifics, these sensations aren't just random static. According to the text, feeling sharp electricity in your head is often associated with interference from snake spirits. Tingling or heaviness in your shoulders or lower back? The text links that to fox spirits. But listen, the most important takeaway isn't memorizing which spirit does what, it's understanding the root cause. This stuff happens when you have high spiritual sensitivity but severely lack physical resistance. The text stresses that you absolutely cannot overreact. You need the mental toughness to calmly let these sensations pass without panicking. Now, the core solution, it might totally surprise you. Instead of handing you some complex spiritual ritual to ward them off, the text firmly insists on prioritizing basic, ordinary physical health. The quote literally says, "First of all, please start by getting your physical condition in order. Healthy living is the foundation. The absolute best defense against unwanted spiritual interference is just having a strong, healthy physical body."
To build up that necessary resistance, you just need to focus on 4 ordinary habits. 1. Establish a consistent daily routine. Don't live in chaos. 2. Get enough high-quality sleep. Avoid the whole nocturnal lifestyle thing. 3. Eat well to gain actual physical strength. And 4. Please avoid deep meditation when you are completely exhausted or running on zero sleep. That is exactly when your spiritual resistance is at its absolute lowest.
And this is exactly why all of this matters for your own practice. This is the big takeaway from our explainer today. Mastering meditation is absolutely not about escaping reality or becoming purely ethereal. It's about actively managing and respecting your physical body first. If you want to safely and effectively reach those higher spiritual states, you cannot bypass the mundane, everyday reality of taking care of your health. Your body is the anchor for your entire practice.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on regarding your own routine. If your physical reality so heavily dictates the quality and safety of your spiritual experiences, are you truly treating your body with the reverence it needs to succeed? Seriously, what daily habits, whether it's your sleep, your diet, or how you handle stress, are you going to change today to become a stronger, more resilient practitioner? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this helps ground your practice moving forward.
Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer. We're going to unpack a really structured, highly practical framework for achieving mental peace, known as the happiness meditation method. If you're the kind of person who loves breaking down abstract spiritual concepts into totally usable everyday tools, well, you're in the exact right place. Let's get right into it.
So the source material we're looking at today is a fascinating book called The Secret of Meditation by Ryuho Okawa. Specifically, we're zoning in on Chapter 4. What's super notable about this text isn't just that it offers advice. It gives us a literal, logical roadmap for mental control. We're going to trace an arc that starts with intensely protecting our own inner sanctuary, and then it scales all the way up to completely expanding our cosmic perspective. Here's exactly how we're going to break this down today. 1. The inner sanctuary. 2. Organizing worries. 3. Building the shield. 4. Releasing others. And finally, 5. Expanding perspective.
Okay, starting with Part 1, the inner sanctuary, creating boundaries.
Now take a look at the striking contrast we have here. In modern society, right, there's this massive emphasis on empathy, on being totally open and feeling everything super deeply. But the author actually proposes something deeply contrarian, the intentional ability to not feel. And I want to be clear, the text frames this not as apathy, but as an absolutely crucial active defense mechanism. When you're constantly bombarded by worldly noise or other people's stress, your spiritual defense is actively choosing not to absorb it. You really need that capacity to just turn off the emotional receiver.
So how do we actually achieve that ability to not feel? Well, the source outlines some really practical tactics. You have to actively protect your mind's environment. This means deliberately carving out dedicated alone time and having the sheer discipline to avoid unnecessary contact with others when you're feeling drained. The book actually uses this great metaphor of retreating to a cave, finding that quiet space where you can intentionally block out negative mental waves. By creating this physical and mental distance, you're literally giving the ripples in your mind the time and space they need to naturally calm down.
Moving on to Part 2, organizing worries, the mental sort.
This is where the author introduces a super pragmatic dichotomy for dealing with daily anxieties. Basically, when a worry pops into your head, you immediately sort it into one of 2 buckets. Bucket 1, actionable worries. These are the things you can solve yourself through direct action. They require your immediate focus and problem-solving skills. Bucket 2, unactionable worries. These are the problems that literally only the passage of time will fix. For these, the required action is intentionally letting go. Applying this mental sort is just an incredibly effective way to eliminate the paralyzing effect of anxiety. It completely stops you from wasting your energy on things that time has to fix for you anyway.
And the text really drives this point home. It states that evaluating and swiftly categorizing your daily worries isn't just some life hack, it is the ultimate mental training. The sheer speed at which you can recognize a worry as unactionable and then intentionally switch your mindset away from it, that's presented as the exact measure of your mental control.
Let's look at part 3, building the shield, accumulating success.
So how do we keep from being overwhelmed by the unknown? The author outlines an incredibly grounded 3-step approach for this. Step 1, face your daily challenges head-on, honestly, no matter how minor they seem. Step 2 is really the core of this strategy. You deliberately accumulate small, everyday successful experiences. Did you handle a tough conversation well? Did you successfully categorize a worry today? Boom, log it as a win. Finally, step 3. You transform those accumulated successes into unshakable self-confidence. The source text emphasizes that this steady diet of small, everyday victories acts as a literal psychological shield. When an unknown problem pops up, your brain looks at your track record of wins and just says, hey, I've handled things before, I'm going to handle this too.
Which brings us to part 4, releasing others, the principle of forgiveness.
This perfectly illustrates the author's highly pragmatic approach to holding grudges. Think of your mind as an absolute kingdom, where you are the sole ruler. You have complete dominion there, right? But here is the hard truth. You have absolutely zero jurisdiction over the kingdoms of other people. The text argues that because we can barely understand our own complexities, let alone perfectly understand or control anyone else, holding on to anger is fundamentally illogical. So forgiveness isn't just framed as some lofty moral ideal here. It's literally the logical path for a ruler who just wants peace in their own domain.
Building directly on that idea, the framework outlines exactly how to cut these mental attachments. First up, you have to completely shatter the illusion of perfect mutual understanding. People are going to misunderstand you, and you are going to misunderstand them. Accepting that is a huge step. Second, realize that holding a grudge doesn't actually punish the other person, it just creates massive internal dissonance in your own carefully protected mind. By letting go of the desire to control how other people feel or act, you're practicing a kind of tolerance that the author says directly facilitates your own spiritual and mental growth. Basically, you forgive to free yourself.
And that leads us to our final section, part 5, expanding perspective, micro to macro.
Now, the author notes something crucial here. All this mental control and self-realization shouldn't just end with selfish ego building. It's really not just about making yourself comfortable. The framework suggests that true self-realization actually involves aligning your personal growth with a grander, universal purpose, which the text refers to as God's ideal. It's about becoming a fully functioning part of a much larger whole. And to do this, the text introduces a really powerful visualization technique. First, I want you to visualize the extreme micro perspective, exactly as it's described in the source. Picture a single person. They're sitting inside a small room. That room is inside a building, which is tucked away in the sprawling city of Tokyo, which itself sits on the small island nation of Japan. This incredibly microscopic, zoomed-in view of human existence, that represents exactly how our daily worries usually feel. Immediate, narrow, and totally all-consuming.
But the absolutely crucial point is what happens next. You take that zoomed-in view, and you violently pull the camera back to the extreme macro perspective. Suddenly, that island, that entire planet is just a tiny Earth floating in the unimaginably vast expanse of the great universe, resting in the hands of the divine. The author calls this realizing the universal self. And in the face of this massive cosmic scale, all those anxieties back in that tiny room, they completely lose their heavy, suffocating power.
The ultimate key to achieving profound mental tranquility in this whole meditation method is learning how to fluidly oscillate between these two perspectives. You acknowledge the micro, you sort your worries, you build your shield, you do the real work in your small room. But the absolute second you feel trapped by those small-scale worldly anxieties, you intentionally shift to the macro. You connect with the infinite universe, acknowledging that while you are small, you have a deeply purposeful place within this grand design.
It is such a comprehensive framework, and it shifts the control entirely back into your hands. By protecting your space, sorting your thoughts, accumulating those small wins, releasing illogical anger, and ultimately scaling your perspective, you literally architect your own peace. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought today. Right now, are you trapped in the micro of your daily worries, or do you have the discipline to zoom out to the macro of your higher existence? The choice is entirely yours.
Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to this explainer where we take fascinating source material, break it down, and figure out how to actually use it in our daily lives. So today we're talking about something so many of us try, but let's be real, often struggle to keep up with: meditation.
We all know it's supposed to be this amazing tool for peace and clarity, right? But then real life happens. You're exhausted, your mind is racing, or you're just sitting there with your eyes closed feeling totally lost. Well, if any of that sounds familiar, you are absolutely in the right place.
Our focus today is on a book called The Secret of Meditation. And what makes this particular text a real game changer isn't just that it talks about the high-level spiritual benefits. Actually, it acts as a super practical guide for the exact everyday roadblocks that we all face when trying to build a consistent practice. The author totally acknowledges that, hey, we're human beings with messy, complicated lives. We're going to zero in on Chapter 5 of the text, which is set up as a Q&A on meditation for happiness. This is where the author answers real-world questions from actual practitioners. It's highly actionable stuff that cuts right through the abstract theory and gives you solutions you can literally use today.
So here is our menu for today. We'll cover real problems in meditation, mental habits to prevent dementia, what to do when you're just totally exhausted, finding a balance between reflection and forgetfulness, and finally, what to do when you just can't seem to visualize anything.
Section 1. Real Problems in Meditation, Addressing Everyday Hurdles. Section 2. Mental Habits to Prevent Dementia, Proactive Cognitive Health.
A huge theme in this text is that meditation is incredibly flexible. It's meant to serve you at different stages of life. And for a lot of older adults, or honestly anyone looking ahead, a major hurdle is the fear of cognitive decline. Have you ever worried about aging or losing your mental sharpness? Maybe you've watched a loved one go through it. It's tough. So how can something like meditation actually help stave off senile dementia?
While the author explicitly addresses this in the text, according to the source material, the secret is keeping the mind active and maintaining your capacity for judgment. It's not just about spacing out and relaxing, it's about active mental engagement and preserving your brain's ability to evaluate the world around you.
So the crucial point is how the author structures this solution. The text lays out 3 proactive habits. First, daily self-reflection to actively assess your actions. Second, maintaining right faith, which gives you a deeply grounding sense of purpose. And third, practicing mental concentration to keep those cognitive muscles flexed. It's a very active, engaged approach to mental longevity.
Section 3. What to do when exhausted. Managing physical limits.
Okay, we really need to talk about modern burnout. You know that feeling when you drag yourself home after a brutal day? Remember you promised yourself you'd meditate, and you're just too exhausted to even function? Does forcing yourself to sit and focus in that state actually do any good?
Actually, the source material completely debunks the myth that you have to meditate every single day, no matter what. The text points out that your mind and body are so deeply intertwined that ignoring extreme physical exhaustion totally defeats the purpose of the whole practice.
I love this part. The text states plainly, when extremely physically fatigued, prioritize getting enough sleep and recovering your physical strength first. It is so refreshing to hear this. The author is literally giving you permission to just go to sleep. If you're sick or running on empty, forced meditation is not a badge of honor, guys. Rest has to come first.
Section 4. Balance of Reflection and Forgetfulness, Navigating Emotional Baggage. Now we're getting into what I honestly think is the emotional climax of this text. There is this subtle trap that a lot of really dedicated people fall into, getting completely bogged down in emotional baggage. We've all been there, right? You start analyzing your past mistakes, trying to learn from them, and suddenly you're just drowning in this spiral of guilt. How do we reflect on our faults without letting them paralyze us?
The source acknowledges this exact danger. In the Q&A, someone actually asks about this dilemma, feeling like they're just constantly staring at their past sins and making zero forward progress. The text warns that deep reflection, if you're not careful, can accidentally turn into a really toxic, punishing spiral.
And this brilliantly illustrates the author's solution, balancing reflection with forgetfulness. On one side, yes, we have deep reflection, doing the heavy lifting of owning our faults. But then, the text brings in this beautiful metaphor of the river of forgetfulness. The idea here is that once you've truly reflected and learned your lesson, you have to wash that guilt away in the river. You simply cannot carry the weight of everything you've ever done wrong forever. Letting go isn't just nice, it's a necessity to move forward.
Section 5. When you can't visualize, practical execution.
All right, let's talk about an incredibly common frustration, especially if you're a beginner doing guided meditations. You're sitting there, the guide is telling you to picture a bright, healing light or whatever, and nothing. You just see the dark back of your eyelids. It's the worst. So what on earth do you do when your brain just refuses to paint those pictures?
The source material tackles this head-on. When asked what to do when mental imagery just isn't working, the text offers a surprisingly grounded physical workaround. You do not have to just sit there in the dark getting annoyed with yourself.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an actionable solution. The author suggests stepping away from closed-eye visualization entirely. Step 1, open your eyes. Step 2, grab a pen and a piece of paper. Step 3, physically write out your thoughts and the specific things you are trying to visualize. By grounding your mind in a physical action, you bypass that mental block completely. You're still focusing your intentions, but you're using physical tools to get the clarity that your mind's eye just wasn't delivering.
If we distill everything we've looked at today, this is the absolute core takeaway. True meditation works with our human limitations, not against them. Whether you're dealing with the realities of aging, total physical exhaustion, lingering guilt, or you just can't visualize things in your head, the practice is supposed to adapt to you. It's a tool to enhance your life, not some punishing, rigid chore you have to suffer through.
So I'm going to leave you with this to chew on. Are you trying to force your meditation practice into this perfect, unattainable box, or are you letting it adapt to the messy reality of your actual daily life? I really hope this explainer gave you some practical tools to shake up your approach to mindfulness and maybe inspired you to check out the source material for yourself. Thanks so much for learning with me today.